Hey everybody, it's John Small. Just wanted to give you a heads up before we start the podcast. Ashley and I talk about some pretty graphic sexual acts in this interview, and it might not be for everyone. So if that kind of thing makes you uncomfortable, this might be an episode to skip. But we think it's a really important topic, how cannabis can enhance your sex life. So here we go. From Wada Brands, welcome to Enhance Your Life. I'm your host, Jonathan Small, and each week I talk to people from all sorts of professions and backgrounds about how cannabis has enhanced their lives and how this healing plant can enrich your life too. Hey everybody, welcome to the Enhance Your Life podcast. I'm your host, John Small. So great for you to join us today. Our topic on the show, cannabis and sex. Great topic. And we have somebody who is an expert on this topic with us today. Can't really think of anybody that would be a better person to talk about this than Ashley Manta. Ashley is an award-winning sex educator and a relationship coach, and she has become a much sought-after authority on mindfully combining sex and cannabis as part of her CannaSexual brand. Ashley is also the author of the CBD Solution Sex, and she has written for Playboy as a Playboy advisor. She completed her certification as a body sex facilitator. We'll have to find out what that is. After studying with the legendary pleasure pioneer, Betsy Dodson. And Ashley facilitates retreats and workshops at resorts and festivals around the world. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So it's quite a background. I'm fascinated with you already. So tell me a little bit about your origin story. Like, how did you get into this world of being a sex educator and a relationship coach? How did this all happen for you?
Well, I was always the awkward one who talked about sex too much. Even growing up, I was like, but masturbation's awesome. Why are y'all so awkward about it? And this was not my original plan as a profession. I was going to be a lawyer. I went to college, got my bachelor's degree in philosophy, ended up getting my master's degree in philosophy, ultimately decided not to go to law school. And during grad school, I started taking women's studies, gender studies, sociology, nursing classes, and really sinking my teeth into sexuality as an academic discipline, as well as teaching classes to undergrads and working at the Women's Center and things like that. And so this really felt like an amazing opportunity. And I was doing a lot of work, especially on sexual violence prevention. That has always been a passion of mine, to increase awareness around consent and negotiation and having sex that's a hell yes, you know?
Yeah.
And so that work was really potent and powerful. And when I moved to California in 2013, I got to access medical cannabis for the first time. That, of course, was a game changer, and the rest is history.
The rest is history. Well, not to be too much, and you let me know if I'm getting too personal here, but you mentioned that sex and violence was a big issue for you. And I read that you have some personal experience with this. Would you mind sharing that with our listeners?
Absolutely. So the thing that really got me into sex and cannabis was that I am a trauma survivor, and I had pain with penetration my entire adult life. And when I got to California, I tried this THC-infused oil, and I was able to have penetrative sex without pain for the first time ever as an adult. And that was such a watershed moment for me to be like, oh my gosh, this is such a big deal to be able to have this experience and enjoy it the whole time, start to finish. And I don't know any other sex educators who are talking about this, because this is a really valuable tool to have in your toolkit. So from there is where CannaSexual was really born.
So explain to us what CannaSexual is.
CannaSexual is a word that I made up.
It's a good word. I like
it.
It combines two great things. Yeah.
Right? I like portmanteaus a lot. It's just one of my kind of linguistic follies. And so CannaSexual really refers to an approach, a methodology of combining sex and cannabis mindfully and deliberately on purpose, with the intention of enhancing intimacy and deepening pleasure, whether you're solo or partnered.
Yeah. So talk to us about that, about how it enhances your sexual experience, your sex life. You talked about your own experience where for the first time penetrative sex wasn't painful. But if people want to bring it into their own experience, what would you say to them about it?
I would say that cannabis is such a helpful tool because it both addresses the things that get in the way of pleasure, connection, and intimacy, things like pain or feeling uncomfortable and disconnected from your body or having those racing thoughts that you can't quite get to slow down. Cannabis is great for really helping you drop in and be present. It's also, if you're feeling kind of good as your baseline, it's great for elevating sensation. It's great for helping you feel really heart opening and yummy toward your partner. And that's going to make for more amazing experiences. And so it really kind of meets you where you are and gets you to closer to where you want to be.
Do you think it's for everybody? Do you think it really helps the experience, or is it kind of a personal choice?
I think it's a personal thing. I don't think there's anything out there that's really for everybody.
Very
Like,
true. Very true.
we're so individual and unique, and people have, if you have a really bad anxiety, COVID, this was like, I had the most empathy in the world this past year because my anxiety went off the chart, as so many people's did.
Yes. Hello.
And all of us,
present.
right?
Yeah.
Show of hands,
Raise your
moment of
hands.
silence.
Yes.
For like all of the fucking panic attacks that I had in the past 18 months. But like, normally cannabis would be my go-to for quelling the anxiety, and it was actually making it worse. I had to switch to exclusively topicals, super, super high CBD and very low THC products for a big chunk of COVID. It's only been in the past like 4 or 5 months that I've been able to start my consumption back up to not even close to where it used to be, but like that I can smoke a joint and not have to stress about, oh my gosh, is this going to give me a panic attack? And even now, if I go too much, if I take 3 hits instead of 2, it's a little iffy. So it's really not for everybody. You have to be honest with yourself about where you're at and where your mental health is, and get that support that you need to feel comfortable in your body first. And sometimes cannabis can be a tool in that, and sometimes it can make it worse.
Yeah, we forget that. It really is a personal experience. Everybody has a different experience with cannabis. As far as cannabis and sex, how does CannaSexual work? Is it a consulting service? Do people come to you and say, I want to start incorporating cannabis into my sexual activity, tell me what to do, kind of thing?
That would be a really interesting thing if that were to ever happen, but it doesn't. I've been doing this work for, since 2014. Maybe once.
Yeah.
One time has someone ever come to me and been like, I need help specifically with like which cannabis products to use in my sex life. That's almost never the problem that people are running into when they come to me for coaching. Often it's communication. It's desire discrepancy, where one person wants to have sex more frequently or differently than the other one does. Opening up the relationship, dealing with jealousy and insecurity. Those are the things that people tend to seek out sex coaches for.
Right.
And honestly, even if somebody came to me and was like, what's the best strain for sex? I would redirect them, because there's so much to it to be able to just spit out, this strain, this will do it. Yeah, no problem.
Like we said, it's all individual. Strains affect different people different ways.
So most often, CannaSexual ends up looking like workshops. I teach at retreats. I speak at conferences. So it's kind of awareness raising on a group scale, and going over broad themes, doing podcasts and other kinds of education to the public. And then my sex and relationship coaching tends to focus more on the sex and relationships than the cannabis side. But a lot of people come to me because they know that I'm cannabis friendly.
Right.
Whereas there are some therapists who are like, oh, cannabis, that's terrible, or they don't know anything about it. So, if you're cannabis friendly, queer, non-monogamous, kinky, witchy, like, I'm your girl.
Yeah. So at the workshops, what are some of the topics that you talk about?
Oh gosh, everything from anal sex and prostate stimulation to hand jobs. That's one of my very popular ones. And pussy massage, and how to use cannabis topicals to give amazing hand sex experiences.
Wow. That sounds very detailed. You have where do you think this comes from, that you just don't have any reservations about talking about things that some make people get uncomfortable? Like when you said those words, it's so funny because it's just like my first reaction is like, she should say those words. And then I'm like, why do I have such a reaction that when it's really just a natural thing? But we have such a stigma around sex, and you're actually talking about two things that we have a stigma around. So it's like a double stigma attack right here. You're like that. But where do you think your comfort level comes from for that?
What to say? I mean, I was always that awkward kid that talked about sex too much. So like even early on, I didn't have that same kind of shame. I think some of it, it's weird to say, is a result of the fact that my first sexual assault was when I was 5 and the second one was when I was 13. So sex was never the like sacred thing. And I had other hangouts about sex because of that. And so God knows, I'm not saying that that was a good thing that any of that happened, but like it kind of forced me to look at sex differently. And it forced me to do a lot of the work that I've had to do to start to integrate the trauma. And it's a lifelong thing and I'll be doing it until I die. But the work that I had to start doing very early kind of helped untangle a lot of the societal shit around sexuality for me. And at this point, honestly, it's just fucking fun. It's so much fun to be
literally
like hand jobs, vulvas, clits, lube, coming, and people are like,
those words. Yeah. You just to watch my reaction, like, oh, did you just say those words? Are we even allowed to say those words on this show? But we should be.
I like being the permission giver and inspiring people to, step outside their comfort zones.
Right. And do you feel it's the same with cannabis? Do people still have the same kind of stigmas around cannabis? I would imagine a lot of people who come to a CannaSexual workshop already have somewhat of a comfort around cannabis, or they wouldn't be going to something called CannaSexual. Or am I wrong? Is there still a lot of stigma around the plant?
It's a mixed bag. It depends on where you live. I grew up in Pennsylvania, which is so conservative. And so, at least the part of Pennsylvania that I grew up in,
like
I later moved to Philly, which was a little bit better. But still, like by and large, the East Coast and a lot of the country is still so shut down around cannabis. So yeah, in California, I'm
Plymouth,
like, hey, y'all.
yeah, it's the Puritans. That's Puritan country, right? Like that's kind of where
totally
they were.
Puritan country.
Yeah.
So SoCal's like, oh yeah, like we're all smoking in a circle. Well, pre-COVID, before class. And the East Coast is like, cannabis. So like when I went to my best friend's wedding in 2014, I had to lie. I was like, oh, what do you do? I'm in sales. Like I couldn't, because they would be awkward and uncomfortable. And I remember like when I decided to get into sex and cannabis, one of my sex educator colleagues was like, no one's going to take you seriously if you talk about cannabis. They're just, you're going to shoot all of your job prospects to hell and no one's going to pay you and no one's going to hire you. And you're just going to kill your career. That is one of my favorite things to look back on and be like, funny.
When it comes to CBD and THC, are there different uses in sexuality? Is it like THC work better for some things, CBD work better for other things? Or is it just good to do a combo deal? What's your take on that? Again, I know it's different for a lot of people, but.
Right. I'm a firm believer in the entourage effect. So I think more cannabinoids are better. Doing anything in isolation is not going to be as effective as using it in conjunction with other cannabinoids. So that's kind of a baseline to keep in mind. I think CBD has gotten a lot of popularity because people are so afraid of the intoxicating effects of THC. But in reality, and my colleague Chelsea Sabara talks about this a lot, CBD is not a particularly like special cannabinoid. She calls it a slutty cannabinoid. It's got weak action at a number of shallow receptors. Like it's
that's hilarious.
That is not to impugn sluts, by the way. But
right. but CBD is very offended right now. I'm sure I'll be getting letters from CBDs.
Like putting its hands on its
hips.
Like
what do you mean slutty? Yeah.
But it's gotten so much hype, and a lot of it is placebo.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that CBD doesn't work at all. It totally does. It's, I've been relying heavily, like I said, in the past year on like high CBD, low THC, but I'm talking about like 150, 200 milligrams of CBD, not these little 5 milligram gummies.
Yeah. It has to have.
That's been helpful for my anxiety,
right.
But
you need to have a stronger dose. Yeah.
Exactly.
And do you recommend, I mean, I know the kind of mantra of this show, and because Wana, which sponsors this show, primarily has edible products, start low, go slow. Is that sort of the same with incorporating cannabis into sex to like let's say somebody's listening to this and they want to start incorporating cannabis into their sex routine, but they're not exactly sure like how. What would be your recommendation there?
Honestly, edibles are not the one I would start with for most people, especially if they are not super familiar with cannabis, because the edibles high is a little bit different. It's often unpredictable in terms of how quickly it's going to come on, how long it's going to last, where exactly you're going to go in that particular trajectory. it's a lot of variables for someone who's a little bit uncertain.
Yes.
So for the newbies, I tend to recommend smoking or vaping because you can take a puff,
Right.
wait, see how it hits you, and then modulate accordingly, as opposed to edibles where if you just took too much on the first go, you wait that full 2 hours and then you're like, oh shit. But my mantras are negotiate before you medicate, consent first, always have a conversation about what's on the table, what's not on the table, what you're expecting this particular product to do for you, how to be able to tell if you're in some sort of distress, and how you want to be supported if you happen to find yourself in that space. And then the start low, go slow is pretty much good for all aspects of life.
Yes. Yes.
Cannabis, sex, start with kind of low impact activities like eye gazing, hugging,
Right.
massage,
Yeah.
kissing, and then gradually continue along the path if that feels good for you, and know that you don't have to have penetration to have sex. That's one of the biggest like pet peeves that I have in the world, is that we get so fixated on I have to fuck, and fuck means penis in vagina.
Yes.
And it's like, well, it doesn't have to, though. There's all sorts of reasons why that may not be available at any given time. And so to know that you can still connect with your partner and explore eroticism together and feel pleasure without having to go all the way, quote unquote, I think that frees up a lot of creativity.
Yeah. What an interesting thought. I think a lot of people have that assumption that sex means actual like full intercourse, and it doesn't have to be. And I think that kind of, why is that a problem? Do you think that kind of stresses people out because they feel like they need, in order to be having like sex, they have to be doing that act?
Oh my God, yes. I think it stresses people out. I think we put so much pressure on ourselves. If you have a penis, you're stressed about long, hard, lasting, coming too soon. All of those things are stressing you out. If you have a vulva, you are worried about smell, taste, appearance, hair, if it hurts, if you're going to have stimulation that's going to bring you to some sort of climax. And, maybe you're bleeding. Maybe you just don't feel like having something inside of you. It's a very vulnerable experience to be penetrated by another person, regardless of what or who is being penetrated. You're letting someone literally inside of your body. And so
Right.
depending on how stressed you are or how like shitty of a week you just had, that may not be particularly appealing to you, but you may want to still connect with your partner in other ways. And what I see all the time in the couples that come to me is the person who doesn't want to be penetrated wants to do other things. They want to make out. They want to have closeness. But the other partner is so fixated on penetration that the first partner is like, I just can't do anything then. If all you want is penetration, and if I kiss you or if I snuggle with you, you take that as like, ooh, green light for penetration. Let's do this. And I just see couples just
Yeah.
to their corners.
So how do you negotiate that situation when people want different things? Is there a compromise?
Almost always. And I mean, of course, it's different for everybody, but for most couples that come to me with desire discrepancy, the first thing I do is I take penetration off the table for 30 days.
It's just off
Like
the
that
table.
is just not an option. You got to do other shit. And then what I find for the resistant partner, the partner who's like, I don't want to do penetration, they're like, whew, okay, pressure's off. Like now that that's not a thing that I have to worry about, I can kind of tap into what I actually authentically do want. And I find it actually helps the partner that wants to penetrate because they get to learn that it can still be enjoyable without it.
Yeah. What do you think is the number one sort of problem that you come across in your practice between couples? Is it communication? Is it we don't have enough sex? Is there something that you just hear consistently?
It's two things. One is communication, specifically. I wish my partner was a mind reader so I wouldn't have to say whatever it is that I want out loud.
Yep.
That's a big one. And the other one is they judge the health of their relationship on the frequency of sex instead of the quality of sex.
That's really interesting. Now, can cannabis help? Let's take the first thing, where the mind reader issue. Does cannabis help in that situation? Does it relax people? Does it make them a little less self-conscious about that?
I think it can. I think when our nervous systems get so wound up that we just like every part of our body is clenching and we're kind of braced for impact all the time because we live in this world that's kind of on fire right now. I think cannabis can really help you just unclench a couple degrees. And then from that place, you take a deep breath, you start to go, oh, my partner and I are on the same team. We're not adversaries. So we can actually come at this. It's us versus the problem, not me versus you.
Right.
And I think cannabis kind of helps to shift gears in that way.
Now, you mentioned like using it as a topical. Does it increase pleasure? Do you find that aside from the psychoactive effects of cannabis, talk about the sort of the topical effects of cannabis and how that can stimulate and improve sex?
Yeah. Oh gosh. The thing I love about topicals is that you don't have the head high that you do when you're smoking or doing edibles. So for people who are worried about intoxication, that's an easy box to check. It's like, yes, topicals are great. You treat them like a marinade. Really, topicals are much better for people with vulvas because we have that exposed mucosa. It's much more absorbent. Penises, not super absorbent. You'd kind of have to like dunk your dick in a jar of THC oil for 20 minutes. And I don't know if anybody's going to actually do that. So
I have some friends that might, but yeah, I don't know.
maybe, there's that rare person and to them, I salute.
Right.
But
Yes.
to everyone else, it's so much easier if you have a vulva to just slather on the oil, let it sit, let it marinate for 20, 30 minutes. And then in that time, THC is a vasodilator. So it's going to bring more blood flow to the area, which both makes it more supple. It also helps lubricate. It also makes it more sensitive, decreases pain, increases pleasurable sensations. It's just a win.
Yeah.
It's
Wow.
really
Women
a
are
win.
lucky. Women are lucky in that regard for sure. We can't enjoy the benefits of that. What do you hope that, what's your mission here? What do you hope that people learn from you in this interview and learn just in general in your career and your life's work?
More than anything, I want to empower people to have more pleasure and joy in their lives and to release shame and limiting beliefs. And if I can help you have an experience where you're like, yes, this is exactly what I want in this moment. How could it get any better than this? Oh, fuck yeah. I won. That's my life. That's what I want my life to be.
And a lot of that is because you had those feelings right at one time. So
goodness, yes. I was so disconnected and so disempowered and so far removed from just being able to feel my body at all. And now I'm literally, without hesitation, having the best sex of my life. And some of it is because I have a really great partner and we've been together for 6 years and he gets it. But a lot of it is me. It's the work that I did and working to reframe all the things that I thought were true about what sex had to look like or be like or feel like, and using plant allies to get more into my body.
I'm almost scared to ask this question because knowing how you, because I don't know what I'll open up here, but what's been the most creative use of cannabis that you have seen sexually? Has there been some pretty interesting things that you've seen in your practice or in your experience just hearing people talking about it?
Totally. One of the most revolutionary things for me with cannabis has been suppositories.
Interesting. So
I love them for cramps as just like a baseline taking care of your body thing. They're also just great for vaginal penetration if you have a partner who's potentially, let's say, longer than you are deep and you have the bottoming out problem that so many of us run into sometimes. It really hurts to get knocked in the cervix, but suppositories help a lot. And most importantly, anal. I was not a fan of receiving anal 5 years ago. I was like, nope. I will play with your prostate till the cows come home, but you are not going in me, buddy. And thanks to cannabis suppositories, I am now like, let's do this.
All right, you heard it here first on the enhancer. We talk about enhancing your life. Well, that's a way to enhance your life. Ashley Manta, thank you for being so candid and honest, and it's wonderful what you're doing. If people want to find out more about you and your practice, where should they go?
You can find me on Instagram at CannaSexual, my website, CannaSexual.com. If you are a woman and you are interested in taking my 7-week sexual empowerment and sex magic class, it's called Activating Your Cosmic Pussy. You can also find that at CannaSexual.com. I'm going to be enrolling for my January class starting in the next couple weeks. So that's a good one. And then I have a podcast myself. It's called Elevated Intimacy.
I love it.
So check that out.
Check that out. What do you talk about on Elevated Intimacy? what we're talking about today?
Sex,
Yeah.
relationship dynamics. My producer is also occasionally my co-host, and he's a licensed therapist. So we get very geeky about communication and relationship dynamics. I just did a whole solo one on jealousy and reconsidering jealousy instead of something that's to be avoided, and to make rules around so you don't have to feel it, like treat it as a symptom of an unmet need and start getting curious.
I love that. All right. Well, Ashley, this has been fascinating. Thank you so much for doing the interview. Enhance Your Life is brought to you by Wana, the #1 infused product in North America. Wana's entire process is designed to deliver the same great experience time after time. They have spent years fine-tuning their recipes so that their products are delicious, consistent, and potent. For more information, head on over to wanabrands.com. That's Wana, W-A-N-A, brands.com.